Our motivation. So as we engage in the study of Chandrakirti's supplement, one thing that we should keep in mind is that we're doing so with the support of countless beings, not to mention our root teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, but also the unending lineage of teachers since the time of the Buddha, the lineage of Buddhist masters, scholars, practitioners, as well as Geshe Yeshi Lhundup and Venerable Chodron, Venerable Sangye Kadro, and also our fellow students that we discuss with and do our Western debate with, and learn from their questions. And also here at the Abbey, we keep in mind the countless benefactors who have contributed to, who are contributing to, and who will contribute to the flourishing of Sravasti Abbey, the establishment and flourishing of the Abbey as a source or a place of authentic Buddhist teachings. So first of all, we can begin by generating this sense of gratitude, and when we think about that, clearly what comes in our mind is a wish to repay that kindness that we've received. It's also good to remember that we're not just studying to generate knowledge for our own sake, but rather one of our aims is to study well so that through our studies we'll be able to contribute to the preservation and the spreading of the Buddha Dharma, especially in the West. It hasn't been that long since Buddhism has taken root here in the West. And so our responsibility is not just to study for our own sake, but to study to enable Buddhism to remain in the world as long as possible. Also, I think it's good to study with a long-term aspiration, a very strong determination to receive the complete set of teachings. I mean, we've covered 8 verses in 4 days, so we may be at this for a few years. And so it's most beneficial to receive the entire oral transmission of this text and to study it as well as we can, not only once, but maybe several times if we're lucky, so we can have that long-term aspiration that will help us to guard against things like discouragement or laziness, or maybe even can help us overcome obstacles like sickness or distractedness, those things. So just take a moment to generate a strong bodhicitta motivation, supported by gratitude, supported by a sense of responsibility to preserve the Buddha Dharma. Just to let you know, Venerable Chodron is spending her time in between teachings, tying up loose ends, many loose ends before she has surgery next week. And Venerable Sangye Kadro is at the dentist this afternoon, so any one of our senior nuns could be sitting here right now, but I think the fact that I had a chance to study these teachings over a 2.5-year period at Chenrezig Institute as part of the master's program, the FPMT master's program, maybe that's why Venerable suggested that I fill in today and Thursday. I remember hearing these teachings, or a portion of these teachings, for the first time in 2004 at Deer Park with Geshe Sopa. I just dropped into the series of teachings that had already started and was going on, and I remember thinking, what are they talking about? I had no idea, because I hadn't done any of the philosophical studies. So like Venerable Sangye Kadro mentioned yesterday, this study assumes that we have a lot under our belt, a lot of understanding that comes from topics like paths and grounds and paths, or low rig, mind and awareness, tenets, understanding the different tenet schools, even some logic and reasoning, So that's a big assumption for many of us who haven't had a chance to do that study. When we first hear teachings like this on the classical texts, we're really just being exposed to the language, the terminology. We're lucky if we can get the terminology down, like mind generation, ultimate mind generation. If we can hang on to those sorts of things, we're doing well. And then the next time we hear such a teaching, or the next time we have a chance to go through this text, it will land differently. So this is just the nature of studying Buddhism. And this is frustrating to our Western minds because we have a bit of arrogance thinking that if we hear something once, we should be able to understand it. And that's simply not the case when it comes to subtle topics that we find in the Buddhist teachings. So eventually, if we keep at it, we'll be able to study and receive teachings like Venerable Chodron and Venerable Sangye Krado. You notice that they still have doubts in their mind that they're trying to clarify, even after, 40, 45 years of attending teachings. So this is just the nature of the beast. And so today we can do some Q&A, but I thought it might be helpful just to do a little bit of review of paths and grounds, just to orient ourselves of what kind of mind we're talking about when we use this term mind generation, and give us maybe a little bit more appreciation for what we're talking about. Keep in mind that in the monasteries in South India, the monks and nuns spend, I think she said about 3 years studying this text. And first of all, they memorize the text before they pick it up and begin studying it. So that's quite a benefit that they have that maybe we don't have. They have that text in their mind. And in fact, His Holiness mentioned this several times in the recent teachings, that he memorized Chandakirti's supplement as a young monk. So they have that memorized, and then they will study very slowly. They'll go through a paragraph or two, and then go out to the debate yard and debate it for hours. Whereas today, we went through 4 pages. I don't know about you. If I had hair, I'd be standing out like this, because we covered a lot of material. There's a lot of detail with all that material. So, it's an impossible task to sit up here and even pretend to be able to review it with any depth. But let's go through some paths and grounds, and then let's see where we go with the questions. And certainly I will be drawing on your wisdom and your notes and your expertise as well. Okay? So when we talk about the Mahayana path to enlightenment, or the Bodhisattva's path to enlightenment, we're talking about 5 grounds. So the Bodhisattva path of accumulation, you must learn to abbreviate if you take Buddhist notes, Buddhist teachings and notes. So this is the Bodhisattva path of accumulation. And as Geshe mentioned today, that has three different divisions. It has a small, or I think he called it not initial, but a lesser level, a medium level, and a great level. So the minimum a person needs to enter the Bodhisattva path of accumulation is spontaneous or uncontrived bodhicitta. And as we've been talking about, the sharp faculty bodhisattva, spontaneous bodhicitta. The sharp faculty bodhisattva will also have had developed a conventional realization of emptiness before entering the path of accumulation, but that's only for the sharp faculty bodhisattva. So on this small path, or this lesser path, small, medium, and great, they're continuing to strengthen their bodhicitta, because it's not until this middle path of the path of accumulation that one is no longer subject to relinquishing the bodhicitta, right? So they're strengthening their bodhicitta, their great compassion, but also to move to the path of preparation, that person will need a union of calm abiding and special insight focused on emptiness. single-pointedly focused on emptiness. So by the great level of the path of accumulation, this person will need a realization of emptiness. It's conceptual, a conceptual realization of emptiness. They will need calm abiding, focused on emptiness at that level. And then they're going to combine that calm abiding focused on emptiness with special insight to develop this union of calm abiding and special insight.
So path of preparation, not accumulation.
Path of accumulation to move to the path of preparation. Did I say path of preparation?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you said accumulation.
So this is the Bodhisattva path of preparation. So by the great level, if they haven't, so the short faculty will have that conventional realization of emptiness here before entering the path, but for even the lesser sharp bodhisattvas, modest, thank you. The modest bodhisattvas, by the great stage of the path of accumulation, they have been working on their realization of emptiness. So there's a whole progression of this realization of emptiness. First, you have a realization of emptiness. It's conventional. It's you're getting to that emptiness through the medium of a generic image or a conceptual appearance. And then you combine that with calm abiding. Then you combine that with special insight to get the union of calm abiding. Then on the path of preparation, that person is going through 4 stages: heat, peak, patience or forbearance, and supreme mundane dharma, or what Geshe has been calling the great mundane, great supreme path, something like that. Okay, so there's 4 stages here: heat, peak, patience, and supreme mundane dharma is how I know it. On the path of preparation, so this person is increasing their realization of emptiness. That's primarily what they're doing. They're also accumulating a lot of merit at that stage too. The beauty of entering a path is a pristine awareness qualified by, for the Bodhisattva, qualified by uncontrived or spontaneous bodhicitta. And the beauty of attaining a path is that method and wisdom now qualify each other, even from the beginning of the path. So one's bodhicitta will help to increase one's wisdom, and one's wisdom will help to increase one's bodhicitta and all other positive states of mind, which would be a path. So that's a very strong, that mind is just getting stronger and stronger. Okay, then at the very end of this 4th stage of the path of preparation, the Bodhisattva goes into a meditative equipoise, focused on emptiness. And when that, or let's say an equipoise, there's a question about whether meditative equipoise is found other than with a direct realization of emptiness. So let's just say they're in an equipoise. They're in a strong, concentrated meditation on emptiness. And when that emptiness is strong enough to eradicate or abandon the first level of afflictive obscurations, the acquired or the intellectually acquired afflictive obscurations, that mind becomes a path of seeing, the Mahayana or the Bodhisattva path of seeing. And we can say it has 3 divisions. So, first of all, the first division is called a meditative equipoise, an exalted knowledge of meditative equipoise. Sorry, you probably can't even read this, it's so small. Exalted knowledge of meditative equipoise. And then the second one is a subsequent attainment, an exalted knowledge of subsequent attainment. I'm a little rusty, it's been a few years since I've done the philosophical studies. Let's leave it at that for now. Okay, so let's use another color. That'll be helpful. So the first part of the path of seeing is called an uninterrupted path. So one is uninterruptedly realizing emptiness. And so that the strength of that realization of emptiness is growing, and on this uninterrupted path of that meditative equipoise, one is in the process of abandoning the acquired obscurations. Once that realization is strong enough to completely abandon them, it's called a liberated path. Liberated path. So this is a true path. The uninterrupted path is a true path. The liberated path is also a true path when we talk about truth of path, the four truths. And the emptiness of this liberated path is the true cessation. So one achieves on the first ground, or on the path of seeing, one achieves a true path and also a true cessation, the first true cessation of the obscurations. Okay, so at the same time, that person also becomes a bodhisattva. They become an Arya bodhisattva, and they enter the first ground. So let's draw this with a different color. So this is the first ground. So you have the uninterrupted path and the liberated path. And then one eventually will arise into subsequent attainment. They'll probably get on WeChat and call their teacher and say, hey, guess what happened? So in subsequent attainment, something that's coming clearer for me in this round of study that I didn't pick up years ago is that the majority, I was talking with Venerable about this at lunch, the majority of the minds in subsequent attainment, well, all of them are going to be motivated by bodhicitta, right? These different levels of great compassion that we've been talking about, they will be influencing this mind, the conventional mind of enlightenment. So while this is an ultimate mind of enlightenment, the uninterrupted path, the liberated path, those are ultimate minds of enlightenment. They fit the definition that we find here in the study manual. The direct realization of emptiness and meditative equipoise of an Arya being, which is conjoined with the uncontrived mind of enlightenment. It exists from entering the Mahayana path of seeing through enlightenment. Then just about everything in subsequent attainment is motivated by the conventional mind of enlightenment, which is this uncontrived wish to attain enlightenment for the sake of all beings. So there's a lot to think about when we talk about paths and grounds. Like, for instance, we've been talking a lot here at the Abbey in different classes about how when that bodhisattva, Arya bodhisattva, arises in subsequent attainment, they're now seeing conventional phenomena again. And because that mind is influenced or conjoined with that direct perception of emptiness, the conventional phenomena appear illusion-like. So what's causing that illusion-like appearance is that previous meditative equipoise on emptiness. But that will wane. That won't continue necessarily. It depends on the bodhisattva, what level they're on, the strength of their mind, many other things, many other factors. And that person can still meditate on, they can still have conventional realizations of emptiness in that subsequent attainment. In fact, to move to the next ground, they will enter into another meditation on emptiness. And when that meditation becomes strong enough, it will become the uninterrupted path of the path of meditation. The first uninterrupted path of the path of meditation. Here it's the first uninterrupted path of the path of seeing. So this is all on the first ground. The first ground is kind of unique in that it has two uninterrupted paths, one liberated path and the subsequent attainment. So, that's how it goes. And then the second ground starts with a liberated path. That's on the path of meditation. There we go. Thank you, Venerable Ginny. Okay, so all of this is the first ground. There we go. But there is overlap with the path of seeing and the path of meditation. So the first ground is different from all the other grounds. It has an uninterrupted path of the path of seeing, a liberated path, a subsequent attainment, then an uninterrupted path of the path of meditation. From here on out, all the paths will be very similar. There will be a liberated path, subsequent attainment, and then the next uninterrupted path. So that's the second ground. Then the third ground will be very similar. A liberated path, subsequent attainment, and an uninterrupted path. Okay. So here we're talking about meditative, the exalted knowledge of meditative equipoise. Then they arise into a subsequent attainment. They will practice, like on the first ground, they'll be perfecting generosity. They'll also be continuing to meditate on emptiness. They might have conceptual realizations of emptiness here. Uninterrupted path and the liberated path are only perceptual realizations of emptiness. But they could have other paths of seeing or other exalted knowledges of meditative equipoise that are not necessarily an uninterrupted path or a liberated path. And then this continues through the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, up to the seventh, through the seventh path, ... And then the eighth, ninth, and 10th grounds. Oh, sorry. Okay, and then after the 10th ground, you have the path of no more learning. So in each of these subsequent attainments, they're going to be meditating or practicing their surpassing quality of each ground. So on the first ground, they're engaged in the surpassing quality of generosity. They actually, we can say they actually perfected on the second ground. You know, they've completed it. Let's put it that way. They've completed it on the second ground. They're in the process of perfecting it on the first ground. So the first ground is called the very joyful. Okay, so another thing that Geshe mentioned today was something about these great eons, these countless great eons. Yes, oh, I'm sorry, yeah. So we often hear that it'll take 3 countless great eons to achieve full awakening. The first countless great eon is collected or accumulated on the path of accumulation and the path of preparation. And then in grounds 1 through 7, that's where the second countless great eon is accumulated. And then grounds 8, 9, and 10 are accumulated the third countless great eon. So we're just getting started. we're over. I'm over here. I don't know about you. Not even. Well, we are developing contrived bodhicitta on a regular basis, and we are listening to teachings on emptiness and beginning to meditate on them. So we're creating the seeds. We have the seeds in our mind now of great compassion and of wisdom that will eventually develop into the truth body and the form bodies. So, okay, I hope that was more clarifying than confusing. Good review for me. Does that help? Any questions about that?
I always wonder about the direct realization of impermanence and whether it's even accounted for in the Bodhisattva paths and grounds, and where.
On the Mahayana or the Bodhisattva paths, a person doesn't necessarily need to be an Arya being. So it could happen as early as the path of accumulation or the path of preparation, or even before entering a path, right? From the lower school's point of view, here in solitary realizer paths, it must be an Arya's, what's it called? You have to be an Arya to realize subtle impermanence. Yeah. What are you asking?
Yeah, I'm just asking.
Okay.
Where it falls in the Mahayana. So, it doesn't seem to have much place, although I think it's really important before we realize it. So I just wonder if it's counted in the process.
I've never heard it included in this description of paths and grounds. Yeah. Okay, so we can go back and begin to look at what Geshe was talking about today. One of the things that I have found helpful in the studies that I've done is that when I'm going through a text, when I'm receiving teachings on a text, is to try to take each paragraph of the text and just try to summarize it in my own mind. What is the main point that's being talked about there? That's quite challenging when we're going through so much material as we are in this course. But I'll just give you a little context. On one hand, some of you may feel like we're going very slowly. We're only on page 40 and we've only done 8 verses. That could seem slow. On another hand, we've covered quite a bit. I can't keep up with it in the study periods to really feel like I have a good handle on the material that we're covering. Lama Tsongkhapa adds a lot of additional material to help clarify the points that Chandrakirti is making in his commentary on Nagarjuna's text. Initially, Geshe Yeshi thought that he would cover chapters 1 and 2, but we still have something like 25 pages to go in chapter 1. So I think we'll be good if we cover chapter 1. But I also think that we're going at a pace that we have a chance to hang on to some of the main points. And you might be wondering why he's not taking more time to explain. It's because if he took time to explain, it would take 3 years every day of doing this kind of study. So I think he's aware that for many of us, this is the first time we're studying this text. And what's most important is to give an oral transmission of the text. Even at the pace that we're going, I'm sure that all of us have picked up certain points that, little light bulbs have gone off, and maybe we've settled some questions that we've had in our minds, and especially with the reviews, we have an opportunity to clarify some things or discuss with each other. So I just keep reminding myself how rare an opportunity it is to be receiving these teachings. If I think back, Geshe Sopa taught this text in its entirety, I believe, at Deer Park in the early 2000s. I know it's part of the FPMT Master's Program at Institute Lama Tsongkhapa. It was taught once at Chenrezig Institute. Maybe at Nalanda they study this, I'm not sure. But where else have you heard about this text being taught in its entirety? It's quite a rare opportunity. So, and especially with someone of Geshe-la's caliber going through it. Yeah. Okay. let's just look at what we covered today, and maybe we can at least hang on to a few points from today's teaching. So we went back to, in my PDF, it's page 31. I don't know what it is for yours, but it starts with, in his commentary, Chandakirti says the first ground is called Non-Dualistic Wisdom. It's under the heading Presentation of the 10 Grounds in Common. So here, this section is describing the 4 qualities of the 10 grounds in common. And so it goes through the nature and the qualities, the way they're called grounds, the etymology. And so it's in that section on nature where he came back to this line that says, in his commentary, Chandakirti says that the first ground is called non-dualistic wisdom. This refers to the lack of dualistic appearance of object and subject as if distinct and cut off from each other. So I looked in Geshe Tegchok's book on the precious garland, and he had this to say. He said, the Arya's meditative equipoise on emptiness is a non-conceptual wisdom that directly and non-conceptually perceives the emptiness of inherent existence. This is a non-dualistic mind in that there is no appearance of subject and object. To this mind, only emptiness appears. Conventional objects do not appear to it, and there is no appearance of inherent existence whatsoever. This mind is mixed with the object emptiness inseparably, like water mixed with water. So, this is different from the non-duality that we discussed earlier, isn't it? Because we might ask, if non-duality means the lack of appearance of subject and object in an Arya's meditative equipoise on emptiness, how can a sharp faculty bodhisattva realize non-dual wisdom as a cause of becoming a bodhisattva? And so there, duality doesn't refer to the appearance of subject and object, rather the two that it is free from are absolutism and nihilism. So maybe some of you are familiar with that section in Cutting Through Appearances. It's in the Middle Way Autonomy section where there's a description of the different types of duality or non-duality. And there are 5 types that are listed. This is under Ultimate Truth on page 286. The definition of an ultimate truth is an object that is realized in a non-dualistic manner by a direct prime cognition that directly realizes it. When an ultimate truth, an emptiness, is directly realized in meditative equipoise, it is realized in an utterly non-dualistic manner without any appearance of subject and object, any appearance of conventionalities, any conceptual image, any difference. I asked Venerable what that meant. She said it meant difference of objects. The emptiness is the same of all objects, so there's no difference in the emptiness, even though there's a difference in objects. And then the last one is there's no appearance of true existence. So this non-duality of absolutism and nihilism isn't included there. So that's a conceptual realization of emptiness. So Geshe Tegchok says, sharp faculty bodhisattvas gain a conceptual or inferential realization of emptiness by generating non-dual wisdom. That person gains confidence that attaining full awakening is possible. He or she then cultivates bodhicitta and enters the universal vehicle, path of accumulation. Okay, so we're talking about 2 different things, a conceptual realization of emptiness as opposed to a perceptual ultimate mind generation. Okay, so then Geshe was saying that when we give rise to any kind of consciousness, like an I consciousness, where we observe a referent object, we came to understand that he's using that term referent object. We usually use the term, Venerable uses the term apprehended object or object of engagement, engaged object. So When we give rise to any consciousness, like an eye consciousness, when we observe a referent object or engaged object, the referent object appears as distinct from the mind perceiving it itself. So it's like there's a separate mind over here that's perceiving an object over there. So this might ring some bells when we talked about the appearing object and the engaged object, or the appearing object and the apprehended object. What's actually appearing to the mind, the appearing object, and what is the mind apprehending or comprehending, we could say. What is the mind understanding about that object? I think the main point was that the subject and object, normally because of the strong influence of self-grasping ignorance and its latencies, the two appear very distinct. But in meditative equipoise, that disappears. That's, I think, the main point there. Then the second thing he clarified this morning was that clarifying the 10 grounds or talking about 10 ultimate mind generations. Sometimes we might wonder when we hear teachings like this, especially from Tibetan speakers, they seem to spend time clarifying points that appear very clear in the English, and it's because there's ambiguity in the Tibetan that we're not aware of. So evidently, the way it's spelled out in the Tibetan leaves a question in your mind about which kind of mind of enlightenment are we talking about. So I think that's why he went back to this section and picked up a few points. So he said, since Chantakirti's, the structure of the 10 bhumis, the 10 superior grounds, with respect to the 10 ultimate mind generations, there is not any contradiction between Chantakirti's outline, the 10 superior grounds in terms of ultimate mind generations, because this is a special purpose of it. So generally, mind generation or mind of enlightenment refers to conventional mind of enlightenment. But here in this text, and especially in this text, in this section, when we're talking about mind generations, we're talking about ultimate mind generations. I think that's the main point there. And evidently, Chantakirti goes to great lengths in his auto-commentary to make this clear. He said, if you take these 10 divisions, it would be ambiguous because it could, the conventional mind, because the mind of enlightenment, it could mean the conventional mind of enlightenment belonging to the path of accumulation or path of preparation. That's when he started talking about the path of accumulation is divided into lesser, medium, and great path of accumulation. And then the path of preparation being divided into 4. So he says, when Chantakirti describes the 10 grounds, the very joyful, as 10 mind generations, he's referring to ultimate mind generations, a bodhisattva's uncontaminated mind. Okay, so then there was some discussion about the difference between contaminated and uncontaminated. He said to make more convenient that the text is dealing with 10 bodhisattva superior grounds. Yeah, I guess he's really trying to clarify that, and I'll bet they debate that for a long time, trying to just get that clear, where in the English, especially with Jeffrey's translation, it seems pretty straightforward. He's put things in brackets that make it very easy for us. Then I think it's an interesting point. He said, in respect to the 12 sets of qualities, they're first achieved on the first ground when a bodhisattva has arisen from meditative equipoise. So in subsequent attainment, it's not that they achieve those 10 qualities on the uninterrupted path when they first achieve or attain the path of seeing, but rather in subsequent attainment. At that time, it sounds like that's where the 12 sets of qualities are first achieved. Yeah, he said they are subsequent attainments rather than uncontaminated wisdom. So there's no contradiction for Chantakirti describing 10 grounds from the vast point of view, as well as from the profound. Seeing 100 Buddhas, etc., are qualities belonging to the subsequent attainment rather than the uncontaminated meditative equipoise. Okay, spent quite a bit on that. And then we went back to where we had picked up on, in my text, it's on page 36. Yeah.
A couple of us were talking about this in the break, and it's a minor point, but what does vibrating 100 worlds mean?
Yeah. Good question. Yeah, I don't know. There's probably a lot about these 12 sets that are not really known, like making the ground shake. Does that mean every time we have an earthquake, a bodhisattva has achieved an Arya path? Or I don't think so, but yeah, I don't know exactly what that means. Sorry. Anyone else? Yeah, please.
I think it comes up in that commentary in the Pali Canon. At least this is similar when they talk about the 5 types of causality. And we talk about this a lot in terms of when we translate it. A lot of times we do it like the ones that are like that are physical and that are biological and that are cognitive and then are karmic. But the last one that we usually don't talk about is Dharmic. Dharmic. And that includes some interesting things like world shaking. When somebody reaches nirvana, there's like the world shakes or something. So I think maybe that's the only thing I've ever seen that had said anything about that.
Okay.
I don't know if that's similar, but
I was just going there, but it'd take me a bit.
Okay, we've got a
So-
transcription. Yeah, please go
This
ahead.
is Venerable Semke's hard work transcribing all of those teachings of paths and grounds. So
That are
Venerable-
on the website, the Tipton Chodron website, under Grounds and Paths, taught in 2011. What does it
So
say?
she says, vibrating 100 world systems. You hear about this sometimes. I've never heard a clear thing. In fact, this is the clearest I've gotten so far. You vibrate 100 worlds. This would be probably mundane worlds and maybe some pure worlds. It causes the trainees to aspire to hear and practice the Dharma. So somehow vibrating the worlds, I don't know, makes you wake up or something. Direct quotes.
Makes you wake up or
Mention.
something. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. Okay. So let's look at these 4 features of birth in the lineage and so forth on the first ground. And just see if we can clarify these in our own mind and try to hang on to them as something that can inspire us in terms of the qualities of the first ground bodhisattva. So verse 6, born in the Tathagata lineage, he completely forsakes the 3 links, or sometimes they're called the 3 fetters or the 3 thorough entanglements. There are different translations there. The bodhisattva attains an excellent joy and can vibrate 100 world systems. Okay, so he's born into the Tathagata lineage. He's passed beyond all levels of ordinary beings, hearers, and solitary realizers, and has generated in his continuum the path certain to proceed to Buddhahood. He will not go to other paths and is of definite lineage with respect to his own path. Now, here's a point that there are probably different points of view, and I suspect it has to do with different monastic schools. For the Sarah J school, I think, asserts that upon attaining any of the paths of seeing, whether you're a hearer, a solitary realizer, or a bodhisattva, that Arya will definitely complete the path of their respective vehicle without any interruption. So Geshe seemed to indicate that there may be some rare cases where a hearer on the path of seeing might actually jump to the Mahayana path due to some causes and conditions, but that would be the rare situation. But from that direct perception of emptiness, then that person is definite to accomplish whatever is the goal of their paths. And it wasn't entirely clear to me what's the difference here between, one of the benefits that we talk about of achieving spontaneous bodhicitta is that one outshines hearers and solitary realizers. So what is special about this ability on the path of seeing, the Mahayana path of seeing? And I wonder if it's similar to, the person is a bodhisattva from the path of accumulation onwards, but now they become an ultimate bodhisattva on the path of seeing. I wonder if it's similar to that. They outshine hearers and solitary realizers from the path of accumulation with respect to their lineage. It's because of the strength of their bodhicitta, right? The Mahayana lineage. But on the path of accumulation, that bodhicitta is now supported by this ultimate mind generation. And so in terms of lineage, this is like the premium lineage that outshines the hearers and solitary realizers. Does anyone else have thoughts about that? Or
In that same translation on Passing Ground, she says, the first time is on the first bhumi when the bodhisattvas outshine solitary realizers. In terms of their lineage, in the sense that when a prince or princess is born, they are still a baby and don't have realizations of a king or queen, but they will become a queen or king definitely. And that they are definitely will become a Buddha where the arhats are still on the fundamental vehicle path. So it's just the lineage is outshining because of the final ascension into a much higher. That's really that's what she's saying as far as outshining them is the final goal.
And I wonder if that's connected with this idea that that upon attaining any of the paths of seeing, one will definitely accomplish their lineage. Where on the path of accumulation or the path of preparation, especially on the small level of path of accumulation, one could relinquish their bodhicitta and fall to a lesser path. I don't know about that happening on the path of seeing for any reason, but it becomes certain or definite from the path of seeing onwards. Okay, so that's one characteristic. And then he completely forsakes the three links. So these are necessarily three acquired afflictive obscurations. Are these the only acquired afflictive obscurations, do you think?
I would think
No, there's many. 112 at least.
I think we have a lot in our fake news right now. A lot of our conspiracy theories are acquired.
Anyway, whichever.
My personal feeling, I think I spoke with Venerable once about this, is that a lot of our the conspiracy theories, some of our erroneous conceptions about how we engage in the world, they are strong, even though we pick them up during this life, the propensities seem to follow for quite some time. So we come in here with already strong dispositions. So when I look at a lot of the conspiracy theories and some of the erroneous thinking about how we perceive each other according to culture, class, ethnicity, and things like that, I would say that those are acquired afflictions.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay. I think it's beyond the scope of what we can do here to talk about the 112 afflictive obscurations that are described in the Paths and Grounds, but there are many, many things that are abandoned or eradicated on the path of seeing. And the text seems to say that, wait, that's another point. So the artificial view of the transitory collection, that one's okay, that makes sense. Afflicted doubt, one usually has doubt. This afflicted doubt is usually about things like the three jewels. Well, one has already seen the Dharma jewel directly, so that's going to blow that problem. Past and future lives, once you've achieved the path of seeing, you have access to a certain number of past and future lives. And then holding bad ethics and codes of behavior superior. Actually, all of these will be at the seed level, won't they? They won't be manifest in that bodhisattva's mind. So they're abandoning or eradicating at the seed level. These are like the three main obstacles within seeing abandonments, but by no means are they the main ones. Why are they main obstacles? That's a good question. We can hold that in our mind and see if we come up with an answer for that. So why does Chandakirti mention only these three? Other afflictions to be abandoned by the path of seeing are also abandoned. That's the question that comes up there. Yeah, right. I'm reading the text. Yeah. Yeah. So there are two ways to interpret the thought of the sutra. Actually, he just gives us an analogy, doesn't he? There are three main obstacles to progressing towards liberation. In terms of fear, or in terms of mistaking a path, or in terms of causing hesitation. So what are the two ways of interpreting the thought of sutras, setting forth this topic? What do you think is being described there? He doesn't really answer the question. He's leaving it with us. But he's giving an analogy. Well, he's giving us the superior one that accords with Vasubandhu's treasury, okay, which accords with this analogy. These are things that are going to mainly hinder one from pursuing the path to liberation. So they're the ones that are mentioned. But also abandoned on the, yeah, I'm not going into that detail. Okay, then the Bodhisattva attains an excellent joy. That's the fourth quality. So where does this joy come from? He says the superior one accords with the explanation given in Vasubandhu's treasury of knowledge. Okay. So why do you think the Bodhisattva attains an excellent joy? What are your ideas about that?
I would have to think that after countless great eons of being totally consumed in the darkness of ignorance, having the first direct perception of emptiness would be beyond words. I mean, they say it's inexpressible. I just can't imagine the kind of joy one must have at that, really understanding where you are on the path at that point.
Right.
Your afflictions would be so suppressed.
Your
I
affliction.
mean, your afflictions are, one thing they said today is you could have afflictions come up, but they wouldn't be a poison. So that means that you're not being dominated like we are all day, every day. At some time in the day, our minds are under the control of our afflictions and karma. Well, you've just like, boom, you're free of that. It's going to be like a, you know, like in medicine, my dad used to say that all medicines are poisons. But see, we take medicine to help us. Well, our afflictions usually are always poisoning us and causing harm. That's what I loved what he said today. It's still a poison, but it's not causing any harm.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty beautiful. I would be pretty joyful if I had that. The joy, I find actually, personally speaking, that when my mind is really, really calm, like when we're in a really have a chance to do a really retreat where there's no interruptions, and my mind is very calm, naturally it gets joyful. So imagine what it would be like when you could sustain that. It would be very joyful.
Yeah. Anything else? And imagine your greatest aspiration is to be of greatest benefit to all sentient beings, and now you know it's possible
Yeah.
because of that direct realization.
Doubt's gone.
Yeah. Also, having abandoned the seeing abandonments, you have that. You no longer have that disturbing your mind. Yeah, probably we've all had experiences, I imagine, when due to retreat or strong meditation in the morning, and then something disturbing might come your way and you just don't respond to it. And it's such a joy, like, I didn't react. Yeah, imagine that times a billion.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the fifth quality, one can vibrate 100 world systems. He doesn't say much about it, does he? He says he also becomes able to vibrate 100 different world systems or universes. Geshe went over that pretty quickly. Okay, and then moving on to the three features of advancing to higher grounds and so forth. So maybe we can spend time reflecting on those tonight. So I don't know if any of that was helpful to you. Just trying to review, to sit up here was helpful for me. So thanks for your patience, and Venerable Sangye Kadra will be back tomorrow afternoon.